everybody. Welcome to another edition of Diverse Talks. My name is Ria Renouf, and I'll be your host. Today, we are sitting down with Lenya Wilks, who's a director here at DIVERSEcity BC. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Ria.
I'm going to read a little bit about you. A Jamaican native who migrated to Canada in 2016 to pursue her undergraduate at Brandon University in Manitoba, studying her passion for music and capping with a minor in business administration. Do you have a favorite kind of music?
No, not at this moment, but I like to fuse both jazz and R&B. So I'm more leaning into that neo-soul kind of vibe.
And while you were living in and working in Brandon, you were actually the program manager for a regional project that provided career exploration programs for youth.
Yes.
Which I'm assuming translated quite nicely because you came here in 2022 of April and you joined DIVERSEcity, and you've just continued to move up in leadership and in giving so generously to this organization. So
DIVERSEcity has been a home for me for the past 3 years, and what created this space as a home for me was the leadership that I saw when I looked up this organizationship and seeing Neelam, a BIPOC woman, leading a nonprofit, but also seeing the board. The board is representative of the community, and for me, that was really important in making that decision to move to Sur BC.
I love that. That's so awesome. Here you are today, a director. I love it. So I do want to talk to you today about BIPOC leadership, epitome of leadership. Now, when we talk about the term BIPOC, of course, for those who need a refresher, we're referring to Black, Indigenous, and people of color. But I'm curious to know how you define BIPOC leadership.
So BIPOC leadership for me is really about centering the voices and lived experience, but also the cultural knowledge of Black, Indigenous, and racialized communities. It's about that representation in boardrooms, where decisions and policies are being made, so that the people that are mostly affected by these decisions are there to effect the change. And so for me, it's about creating spaces for more people who look like me and the racialized community, and bringing them forward along in this journey of leadership so that they can also create more systemic changes as myself and others are doing.
Now, when it comes to the multicultural identity, how does BIPOC leadership and representation and experience affect that?
I think when a community changes and becomes very multicultural, it is important that that representation is reflected in every aspect. It's important that it's reflected in education, in leadership roles from, say, governmental political standpoint, and also in any kind of aspect of your life. I always say to people that for me, I never really understood the privilege I had growing up in Jamaica as a Black woman until I moved here. Because in Jamaica, my doctors, my teachers, the lawyers, the leader of the country were Black. And so for me, I grew up knowing that there is a potential for me to be as great as I want to be. And so when you think about the next generation and you think about the BIPOC-led racialized community, youth specifically, it is important for them to see themselves in leadership roles and people effectively leading well that look like them. And so for me, I think it is quite important in shaping the next generation and shaping the future of our community.
For sure. Do you think there's anything that is a little bit different in terms of like how you approach the topic of BIPOC leadership with the youth versus maybe somebody who's a bit more established, or maybe an adult who's kind of emerging and moving into that established space?
I don't think it's different, because I think leadership is leadership. And I think whether you have had that leadership experience for 20 years or you're just getting into it, it will mean the same thing. However, people lead differently, and how they do that, it will come from a personal standpoint. But I feel like when you're having the conversation around BIPOC leadership and the importance, it should stay the same, and it shouldn't change based on who we are talking about. The importance and the necessity of why we have BIPOC leadership should be consistent throughout whatever age group you are.
Totally, 100%. Anybody could essentially be, anybody with any kind of experience, background.
Yes.
Essentially, to be a leader. Now, again, exemplary leadership coming from you at DIVERSEcity and just in the community. So how has your identity shape your leadership styles or priorities?
I think for me, somebody once said to me, if you as a BIPOC individual is climbing the ladder and nobody else that looks like you is also climbing that ladder, how does it feel at the top? And so for me, it's about bringing along people as well, so that everybody can share in what success or growth or opportunity or leadership can look like. And so for me, it's about leading with empathy. It's about leading with authenticity. It's about leaning in with my lived experience and understanding that I do not know everything. And I will have to rely and lean on others to guide me through that process. I'm also grateful because I've had really great mentors in my life as a leader. And I'm open to say that my leadership and mentorship has come from both allies and also the BIPOC community. Amazing. Right? And so each person has given me the opportunity to shine, but has also provided me with a space to learn from them and to lean into who I am. And so for me, I also want to give the next person that space as well and that opportunity to lean into who they are and develop their own leadership style.
With all the work that you've been doing, I'm sure that there are some tangibles here at DIVERSEcity, and I want to delve into some of the events and some of the initiatives that DIVERSEcity has been working on around leadership. So talk to me about some of those things, what's happening.
DIVERSEcity for me is such a beautiful space, and I'm grateful for the leadership at DIVERSEcity and leadership from the C-suite and the board, because they have given us the space to create fantastic events that acknowledge the BIPOC community. So we have our signature Black History Month event, which is hosted in February and will be on February 6th, 2026. So put it in your calendar from now. But this event was created to acknowledge and celebrate the Black culture of BC. Surrey, BC specifically has the largest Black population in BC as a whole. And so being able to create a signature event that is acknowledging that community that has been small, but is really growing into a mighty community is really special. And we acknowledge that with our Black Brilliance Awards, and it has a variety of categories. And then we also have our Women Leadership Forum, which is also a fantastic space, because that space is where you see diverse leaderships, you see racialized women, but you also see the allyship community coming together to help women develop their skills. And for me, I think that is really important. And then through DIVERSEcity, I've had the privilege of writing a successful proposal that built out a project for us that is called Builds. And that project is for building up BIPOC-led grassroots organizations. And so we are helping them build their capacity to become leaders that are leading organizations that are rooted in equity-centered work. And it's really amazing that DIVERSEcity is able to do that for smaller grassroots organizations.
That's really cool. And how long has Builds been going on for?
So we've completed the pilot project, which was 15 months. And now we're starting phase 2 of that project, which is now a BC Yukon project.
Wow. So it's not just in like Metro Vancouver proper, we're actually essentially expanding.
We are expanding to the province and Yukon.
With respects to, because as we're talking today, there have been some really interesting times. I actually just finished talking to Neelam, our CEO here, and I am impressed by how optimistic she is. Yeah. And sometimes I worry about the future of, BIPOC leadership or just by our fellows in the community. And I feel worried for them. But how do you feel about the future of BIPOC leadership and where it's going?
I think the BIPOC leadership it's moving along in a really good space. I can talk about it from an internal standpoint at DIVERSEcity. DIVERSEcity makeup is about 95% BIPOC staff, and about 50 of those are in management and leadership roles. And I have a team of wonderful next generational leaders that are ready to make systemic change. They're using their voices, they're ready to advocate, and they are educated and they are ready to lead this work. And I see them stepping into this and taking it to a next step when that time comes. I think the future it's beautiful, and I'm excited to see what they do with it. There are more opportunities for youth leadership development than in my time growing up. And there's more opportunities for youth to engage in civic engagement kind of work, and also from a political leadership standpoint. And so I'm excited because it's a bright future for youth leadership in my mind, and BIPOC leadership.
I wanted to give you an opportunity to connect, obviously, with the audience about advice, like a chance to be sort of a mentor from afar. What pieces, 3 pieces of advice would you like to share with the audience if they're planning to, if they are, BIPOC and they want to be in those leadership spaces but don't know where to start?
Absolutely. I think, one, I would encourage you to volunteer in your community. That's an opportunity for you to meet people and to start to build your network. The second is to find a mentor. Find somebody that can help you develop on the areas that you think you've identified as weaknesses that you want to grow into, but also for them to also highlight for you of areas that they see you improve in. And also, the third one is to keep going. Make your voice heard, take up space where you can, and get people to know you. Know the uniqueness of who you are, the brilliance that you bring, the diverse perspectives and experiences that you have, and how that ties into making change. And I would say lean into that. For me, that is quite important.
Amazing. Lenya, thank you so much for your time and for your comments and your insight. It's such a pleasure to speak with you today.
Oh, thank you for having me.
And thanks so much for joining us for another edition of Diverse Talks. We'll see you in the next one.